Hi. Today, this time, I want to show you exposure of the cameras. Basically, you have to control aperture, diaphragm of the lens, and then shutter speed, where they expose, just for example, expose 1 second, you know. That kind of exposure on the films is very important. To get a good exposure, basically, we have to know what is the normal exposure or good exposure is coming with this. Only this gray card mean this is 18% reflected paper. So what we study is all over the world, objects everywhere, blue sky, trees, everything. And then we put in the mixer, we mix up everything, finally become this density on the films. So that's we are aiming for, normal exposure. So we use this one to take the cameras, usually if you have exposure meter, to put on the object what you want to take photograph. Example, for this large format camera, we have to put this one to aim it to the camera, and then we have to count the exposure. Taking photograph this, especially this camera, below is black. So the camera's exposure meter confused, too dark. It's not dark, this is a black. So you have to put this one, gray card, in front of the object, and how much this camera receiving the light. So we have to count it, this gray card. And then you have to set shutter speed, which exposure time control on the film, and then aperture, which they control the iris to control how much light passing through the lens. All right. So let's study shutter speed and aperture to control to get the good photograph, good exposure. This is the 18% reflecting gray card. It's really very important. Okay. So this is basically shutter is inside the lens. So can you see this? This kind of, we have to control the shutter by manually, the air pump. Fast shutter speed, slow one, sometimes B, up, and then you want to close. So this is a shutter. You have to vary in the bellows, but this is a very conventional and then not very accurate. So we use in the studio, but not nowadays. So now the people use this kind of all shutter, open close, in between the lens. Inside the lens, they open close. We call lens between the lens shutter. So this all camera have a between the lens shutter, open, close, that's a shutter, okay? Even this one. But this type is, you can change the lens. When you change the lens, if you have a shutter here, film is exposed. So this type, we use, we call focal plane shutter. So basically focal plane in front of the films, they have a mirror banging up and down, all right? So behind the mirror, inside the camera, they fix the shutter, focal plane. This is a horizontal move, right and left. So they put it here, and then they have the films behind here, all right? So this is we call horizontal focal plane shutter. But modern camera, we have this shutter, they're similar, but they have a vertically movement. So this is fixed same way. So when you're changing the lens, the film is not exposed. So that way, SLR use a lot. This one is only focal plane shutter. right and left, moving. But basically this type of camera, you cannot change so much lenses. Little bit wide angle lens, little bit telephoto, that's all. So it's not, lens is moving up and down like single lens reflex. Okay, so this one is using modern SLR or DSLR. They use this type. And then probably new type of the DSLR, probably they don't use any this kind of mechanical movement. They use electric shutter. So probably they control much accurately, and then the high shutter speed you can control. Okay, shutter speed. Shutter speed is usually, can you hear? This is a 1 second. So half second, quarter second. So they control it. Shutter open on the film and then they close. So in between this first curtain, second curtain, they control shutter movements. So that's basically focal plane shutter in front of the film. Okay, but please you remember shutter speed, 1 second, after that is half second, a quarter, 1/8, but on the camera dial, they only show you 1, 2, 4, 8. Don't misunderstand, 1 second, 2 second, 4 second, no. 1 second next to is half, 1 stroke 2, and the next one is 4, is mean 1 stroke 4, mean quarter shutter speed. So you're going up to the 15. After 8 and then 15, the number change. You can see if you have an old camera, your parents' camera, can you check 1/8? After that is usually not 1/16, 1/15. So because this is the international standard, so shutter speed, they don't make it so much small number, they use it. So even you put the number 1 stroke 15 shutter speed, actually they're moving 1 stroke 16. Okay? So that's continue until 1000, 2000, 4000. Yeah? So remember, one shutter speed changing is one exposure value. So let's remember the words exposure value. Shutter speed, one click, one exposure value. So this please you remember. But because of the exposure, shutter speed control the light, how much enter the film, plus aperture. Aperture means you have to control the between the lens. I think this side is easier. Can you see aperture, link, open, close? So they permit how much the light going through the lens. So this is aperture, or they call F number. So aperture's one-stop difference is same as the one exposure value as the shutter speed. So one shutter speed make it slower, the light permit more. So that time, if you close aperture one stop, one EV exposure value become darker. So compensating good exposure to make it everything, your object's color, make it gray card, gray scale, 18% reflection gray. If you go to Photoshop, this setting is a very standard for photographers, especially studio, even outdoor. Yeah, this is, you can check your camera's exposure good or not good. Okay. So aperture number is also, I show you on the chart, starting from 1.4, 2, 2.8, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, 16. This is the international standard. So shutter speed 1 second, 2, half second, 4, a quarter is same as the one exposure value change. So according to the shutter speed aperture, if shutter speed, if 1 second is good for aperture 8, if the gray card show you the place, if you change shutter speed 1/2 second, you have to shutter speed become faster one exposure value. So you have to open aperture one stop, so become normal exposure. So actually once you set, according to exposure method, once you set any number, from there don't move. Everything's become normal exposure. Okay? So shutter speed, f-stop is always related to. This too, only we have to master it. So I show you the chart later, close up, okay? So basically, only these two, very important, shutter speed affecting movement. If you use too slow shutter speed, camera shake. Or if you are taking the night scene, very dark, and then stars movement, you have to fix the camera's position with tripod, and then take stars, sky, dark sky. So if you exposure 1 hour, you can see the stars movement, follow the northern star, okay? Yeah, and then shutter speed is a movement control. So if you use sports, if you are children's sports day, you want to take photograph, use higher shutter speed, okay? And then if you want to take photograph, good photograph, like a deep, sharp photograph from about 5 feet, 10 feet to infinity, you have to close aperture, small aperture, so you can get the depth of field. Let's learn the depth of field later. Okay, today's until here.